The day has not fully switched off yet. Even in quiet, something continues to hum beneath the surface. Thoughts return to places that feel slightly unfinished. Moments replay themselves without urgency, yet without leaving. There is no problem in that. Nothing here needs to be resolved. The mind often lingers longer than the body does. It keeps a light grip on conversations, decisions, small details, not because they matter right now, but because letting go has not been signaled yet. This is that space, the moment before any signal is required. There may be a sense that attention should still be directed somewhere, towards something not quite closed, towards something that feels like it should be carried a little longer. That pull does not need to disappear. It does not need to be resisted. It can remain exactly as it is. Here, nothing asks to be finished. Nothing asks to be settled. The fragments of the day do not need to gather into meaning. They do not need to form a story. They can remain scattered, loosely held, without consequence. Effort does not need to stop. It simply no longer needs to lead. The habit of staying alert may still be present. The habit of checking inward, outward, looking for what comes next. That habit does not need an answer here. This moment is not a transition. It does not move toward anything. It does not prepare what follows. There is no requirement to switch off, no instruction to disengage, no need to make a decision about rest. The mind may continue to hover. It may revisit the same thought more than once. It may circle without direction. That movement can pass through without being organized, without being corrected, without being brought to a conclusion. Nothing here depends on clarity. Nothing improves with understanding. The sense of responsibility that usually accompanies the end of the day does not apply in the same way here. Not because it is wrong, but because it is unnecessary. Nothing needs to be carried forward. Nothing needs to be set aside for later. This moment does not ask for completion. It does not expect progress. It does not require you to arrive anywhere else. It can remain exactly as it is, unfinished, unresolved. For now, that is enough. There is often an unspoken rule that rest should come after something is finished, after effort has been spent, after attention has been fully used. That rule may still be present now. It does not need to be removed. The feeling that rest must be earned can stay exactly as it is. It does not interfere with what is happening here. Nothing in this moment requires proof that the day has been handled correctly. Nothing asks whether enough was done or whether something should have gone differently. The habit of checking for completion can continue in the background. It does not need to be silenced. Here, permission is not granted. It is also not withheld. There is no point you need to reach before quiet becomes acceptable. No inner switch that must be flipped before you are allowed to pause. The sense of readiness may still be active, as if something might be called for, as if attention should remain available. That readiness does not need to relax. It does not need to soften. It simply does not need to be followed. Rest does not replace effort here. It does not cancel it. It does not compete with it. Both can exist at the same time without conflict. You do not need to put anything down in order to remain still. Some things can be held loosely without asking for response. The idea that rest belongs only to the end of the day does not apply in this space. This moment does not depend on the shape of what came before. Nothing needs to be wrapped up. Nothing needs to be concluded. Nothing needs to be decided. The mind may still look for a signal, a clear sign that it is time to stop, a sense of closure. That signal does not need to appear. This moment does not announce itself. It does not require recognition. It does not need to be named. You do not have to step into it deliberately. You do not have to agree with it. You do not have to trust it. It is already present. The body does not wait for permission in the same way the mind does. It pauses whenever it is able, without explanation. Here, nothing asks you to justify that pause. You are not being asked to let go of anything. You are not being asked to switch anything off. What remains unfinished does not need to move forward. What feels open does not need to close. For now, nothing more is required. There is a quiet sense that effort is still nearby, not active, but not fully absent. It lingers without direction, like a posture the body remembers even when it is no longer needed. Effort does not need to leave this moment. It simply does not need to decide anything. The mind may still carry a subtle readiness, a feeling that something should be held in place, that attention should remain slightly tense just in case. That readiness does not need to dissolve. It does not need to relax. It does not need to be corrected. Here it can remain without being used. Effort often believes it must continue in order to prevent something from falling apart, as if stopping would allow things to slip or loosen too much. Nothing here depends on that vigilance. The sense of responsibility may still be present, not loud, not urgent, just quietly persistent. That sense does not need to be argued with. It does not need to be reassured. It can stay exactly as it is, without directing what happens next. In this space, effort is not asked to disappear. It is simply no longer central. There is no task waiting behind this moment, no outcome depending on how still you become, no benefit tied to how much you release. The habit of doing can rest beside you without instruction. It does not need to stand down. It does not need to be dismissed. Here, effort is allowed to grow less important on its own. The mind may still return to the same thought, the same unfinished edge, the same small concern. That return does not restart anything. It does not signal failure. It does not require response. Each time it appears, it carries less authority, not because it is weaker, but because it is no longer needed here. The impulse to manage this moment can soften without intention, not through control, but through irrelevance. Nothing in this moment needs to be guided forward. Nothing benefits from being improved. Effort does not need to step aside. It simply does not need to lead. You may notice that attention no longer gathers as tightly, that it spreads slightly, without purpose. This spreading does not aim anywhere. It does not prepare what comes next. It is not a transition. It is not progress. It is simply a change in how much importance effort is given. The idea that something must be done to allow rest loses its clarity here. Not abruptly, not decisively. It just becomes less convincing. Effort can remain nearby, without instruction, without direction, without urgency. It does not need to leave for quiet to exist, and nothing needs to replace it. Effort may still feel close, as if it is waiting for direction, not demanding anything, just remaining available. That availability does not need to be answered. There is no signal coming that requires attention to rise again, no quiet alarm that needs to be watched. Effort often stays because it is used to staying, not because it is needed now, but because it has not been dismissed. Here, it does not need to be dismissed. The sense of almost may still be present, almost finished, almost ready, almost at rest. That sense does not need to complete itself. Nothing changes when it remains incomplete. Effort does not lose importance because it is forced away. It loses importance because nothing responds to it. It waits, and nothing arrives. The body does not require effort to remain where it is. It does not improve by holding tension. It does not benefit from readiness. It simply stays. The mind may continue to offer small prompts, reminders without urgency, suggestions without consequence. Those prompts do not need to be followed. They do not need to be declined. They can pass through without instruction. Effort often believes that something will be lost if it steps back. Nothing is lost here. Nothing depends on how much you maintain. Nothing waits for effort to finish its work. There is no task hidden inside this quiet, no obligation resting beneath it. Effort may slowly discover that it has no role to play, not because it is wrong, but because the moment does not ask for it. This discovery does not happen suddenly. It does not announce itself. It happens through repetition, through being unnecessary again and again. Effort remains available, but less relevant, present, but no longer central. The space around it grows wider, less focused, less defined. Attention no longer gathers tightly around what effort suggests. It spreads, not toward anything, just outward. Nothing fills that space. Nothing needs to. Effort can stay at the edge without moving inward, and nothing changes because of that. Thoughts may still appear. They do not need to stop. They arrive in familiar ways, the same phrases, the same patterns, the same quiet attempts to organize what has already passed. Their presence does not mean that anything needs attention. Thoughts often assume that appearing is the same as directing, that being noticed gives them weight. Here, that assumption begins to loosen. A thought may return without bringing urgency with it. It may repeat itself without asking for response. Nothing follows. The mind does not need to push it away. It does not need to hold it close. Thoughts can pass through without being given a role. They may continue to describe, to label, to explain. Those descriptions do not need to be believed. A thought can suggest that something should be checked, that something matters, that something remains unresolved. That suggestion does not carry authority here. Thoughts often stay powerful because they are followed, because they are answered, because they are used. When nothing responds, their influence thins on its own. They continue to appear, but they no longer lead. A thought may form and fade without changing anything. The space around it remains undisturbed. The habit of analysis may still be active. It may try to connect one thought to the next, to build a line, to create sequence. That habit can continue without being completed. Sequence is not required. Thoughts may still offer conclusions, quiet endings, subtle summaries of the day. Those conclusions do not need to be accepted. They can remain incomplete. A thought does not gain importance by being clear. Clarity does not give it control. Understanding does not increase relevance. Here, thoughts are allowed to exist without consequence. They are not mistakes. They are not interruptions. They simply do not decide what happens next. You may notice that thoughts feel lighter, less insistent, more distant, not because they are fewer, but because they are less central. Attention no longer gathers around them. It rests elsewhere, without being directed. Thoughts may still arise at the edge of awareness. They do not move inward. They do not ask to be followed. Nothing needs to be concluded. Nothing needs to be explained. Thoughts can continue without being resolved, and the space they pass through remains unchanged. Thoughts may still try to position themselves at the center of attention. They may speak as if they carry direction, as if they know where things should go. That tone does not need to be questioned. A thought can sound convincing without being followed. It can appear complete without being accepted. Nothing here requires agreement. Thoughts often rely on being answered, on being taken seriously, on being used as reference. When none of that happens, they remain present without effect. A thought may repeat itself more than once. It may return with the same wording, the same shape. Repetition does not increase authority. It simply happens. The mind may notice that nothing changes, whether a thought appears or not. The moment remains the same. The body remains where it is. The space around awareness stays open. Thoughts may attempt to pull attention inward again, to invite focus, to request engagement. That invitation does not require a response. Attention does not need to decide where to rest. It can remain spread without center. Thoughts may drift through that open space. They do not organize it. They do not structure it. They leave no mark. The habit of following thought may still surface, an automatic movement toward meaning, toward explanation. That movement can pause without instruction, not stopped, just not completed. A thought can begin and simply end, without conclusion, without resolution. Nothing waits for it. Thoughts may offer interpretations of this moment, descriptions of what is happening, ideas about what this quiet means. Those interpretations do not add anything. The moment does not change when they appear. Understanding does not deepen it. Explanation does not stabilize it. Thoughts are no longer needed to make sense of this space. They can remain as background movement, as passing texture. They do not define what this moment is. You may notice that awareness no longer leans toward them. It does not move closer. It does not step away. It simply does not respond. Thoughts continue, and nothing follows. Their authority fades not through effort, but through irrelevance. They are present, but not persuasive. Nothing depends on them. Nothing waits for them to finish speaking, and the quiet that remains does not belong to them. There is a point where the body no longer follows thought, not because thought has stopped, but because the body does not need it anymore. The body has been here the entire time, resting in its own position, holding its own weight without asking for instruction. It does not wait for permission to soften. It does not need to understand what the day has been. It simply remains where it already is. The surface beneath you continues to support without effort, without adjustment, without response. Nothing needs to be held in place. The body does not prepare for what comes next. It does not rehearse. It does not review. Muscles may still carry small traces of the day, not tension, just memory. Those traces do not need to be released. They do not need to be noticed closely. They can remain without instruction. Breath continues without being counted, without being shaped, Without being guided, it arrives, it leaves, nothing else is required. The body does not ask whether it is doing this correctly. It does not measure depth. It does not check rhythm. It stays. There may be a sense of weight, becoming more present, not heavier, just clearer. The weight of arms resting where they are, the weight of legs supported without effort. Gravity does its work without announcement. The body does not respond to every sensation. It does not follow each signal. Some sensations appear, some fade, some remain unchanged. None of them require attention. The space around the body does not close in. It does not expand. It simply exists without direction. The boundary between the body and what surrounds it does not need to be defined. Edges can soften without moving. The body does not move toward rest. It does not arrive there. It is already resting in the only way it knows how. Nothing improves when it tries. Nothing changes when it stops trying. The body does not need to be corrected. It does not need to be adjusted. It settles by not doing anything at all. The contact points remain. The support remains. The position remains. Time passes without being marked. There is no signal that announces settling. It happens quietly, gradually, without instruction. The body continues to rest in its own place, and nothing needs to be added to allow that. The body does not hurry toward any deeper state. It does not look for signs that something is changing. It does not monitor how long it has been resting. Time moves around it without being tracked. The body does not participate in measuring this moment. It does not count breaths. It does not mark seconds. It simply remains. There may be small sensations that come and go without pattern, a warmth, a coolness, a quiet pressure where the body meets support. None of these sensations ask to be followed. They do not combine into meaning. They do not lead anywhere. The body does not respond to every signal it receives. Some are noticed, some are not. Nothing changes because of that. The surface beneath you continues to hold without adjustment, without fatigue, without awareness. The body does not need to meet that support halfway. It allows itself to be held without cooperation. There is no need to find the most comfortable position. Comfort does not need to improve. The body does not evaluate how well it is resting. It does not correct what feels uneven. It does not aim for symmetry. Stillness does not require balance. The body does not prepare for sleep. It does not anticipate it. It does not move toward it. Sleep, if it arrives, will arrive on its own. The body does not invite it. It does not wait for it. It stays as it is. The muscles do not need to soften further. They do not need to release anything. They can remain exactly where they are. The body does not hold itself up. It does not maintain posture. Support continues without effort. The space around the body remains unchanged. It does not press in. It does not pull away. There is no direction here, no forward, no inward, just remaining. The body does not ask what this moment is for. It does not require a reason to stay still. It rests without purpose. Nothing is being practiced. Nothing is being improved. The body does not learn how to rest better. It already knows how to do nothing, and it continues to do exactly that. Nothing is required from this moment. Not attention, not effort, not intention. The idea that something should be happening does not apply here. There is no task hidden beneath this quiet, no instruction waiting to be noticed. Nothing is being asked of the body. Nothing is being asked of the mind. They are allowed to remain exactly as they are. The body does not need to adjust itself. It does not need to settle more deeply. It does not need to cooperate with rest. Rest does not need help. The mind does not need to stay alert. It does not need to let go. It does not need to change its state. Thoughts may still appear. They are not a problem. Sensations may still shift. They do not need attention. Nothing that arises needs a response. This moment does not move toward improvement. It does not aim for calm. Calm is not a goal here. The idea of doing this correctly does not exist in this space. There is no correct position, no correct pace, no correct experience. Nothing needs to line up for this moment to continue. Time passes without being used. Seconds do not matter. Minutes do not matter. There is no benefit in noticing how long this has been happening. The body remains supported. The space remains unchanged. Nothing needs to deepen. Nothing needs to soften. The sense that something should happen next may still appear. That sense does not require resolution. There is no next step waiting behind this stillness. The moment does not prepare what comes after. It does not lead anywhere. Nothing needs to be remembered. Nothing needs to be understood. Understanding would not add anything. This is not a pause between two actions. It is not a transition. It is simply a moment that does not ask for participation. The body does not need to sleep. The mind does not need to empty. If sleep arrives, it arrives without help. If it does not, nothing is missing. Nothing has gone wrong. This moment is complete without completion. It does not require closure. It does not require outcome. It continues by not doing anything at all, and nothing needs to change for that to remain true. There is no need to remain aware of this moment. Awareness does not need to stay in place. It does not need to keep watching. It can drift without direction. Nothing asks it to stay close. The body does not require monitoring. It does not need to be checked. It continues without supervision. The idea of allowing is no longer useful here. Nothing needs permission. Nothing is being withheld. The mind does not need to stay open. It does not need to close. It does not need to do anything with itself. Thoughts may slow. They may not. Either way, nothing changes. There is no advantage to noticing the difference. This moment does not become more complete when it is observed. It does not become less complete when it is ignored. Nothing improves through attention. Nothing worsens through absence. The body remains where it already is. Support continues without interruption. The space around you does not react to what you notice or do not notice. There is no feedback loop here. Nothing responds. The sense of waiting may dissolve, or it may remain. It does not matter. There is nothing on the other side of this moment. No next phase. No hidden shift. Just continuation. The body does not need to arrive at sleep. It does not move toward it. Sleep is not expected. If it comes quietly. If it does not, this moment remains unchanged. Nothing has failed. There is no instruction being missed. Nothing depends on how long this lasts. Time continues without reference. It does not count itself. There is no need to keep track. This moment does not need to be held together. It does not fall apart. Nothing is required to maintain it, and nothing is required to leave it. The voice does not need to stay close anymore. It can remain present without being followed. You may still hear it, you may not. Either way, nothing changes. The voice is no longer pointing anywhere. It is not guiding. It is not leading. It is simply part of the space. Words continue to form, but they no longer gather meaning. They do not connect. They do not build. They arrive and they pass. The voice does not wait for attention. It does not adjust to whether it is heard. It continues without response. At times it may fade slightly into the background. At other times it may seem closer again. Neither matters. The voice does not need to stay consistent. It does not need to remain clear. Clarity is no longer required. Sound and silence begin to share the same role. Neither one leads. Moments of quiet do not interrupt anything. Moments of sound do not add anything. They exist side by side. The voice does not mark time. It does not announce progression. It does not signal change. It stays without indicating why. There is no need to keep track of what has already been said. Nothing depends on remembering. The voice does not mind if it becomes familiar or repetitive or barely noticed. Repetition does not weaken it. Being unnoticed does not remove it. It remains without importance. The space around the voice does not shift. It does not react. The voice blends into that space without effort. Words may dissolve before they are complete. Sentences may feel unfinished. That does not matter. Completion is no longer relevant. The voice does not explain what is happening. It does not describe the state. It simply continues at its own pace. Sometimes the voice feels distant, sometimes closer. Sometimes it is just sound. There is no need to decide which one it is. Attention does not need to stay with it. It does not need to drift away either. Both are allowed. The voice remains without asking to be held in place. It does not require focus to exist. It does not disappear when focus leaves. The rhythm of the voice settles into the rhythm of the space itself. Not faster, not slower, just present. Nothing follows from the words. Nothing begins because of them. They pass like any other sound, and the space does not change. The voice does not try to return to the foreground. It does not compete with silence. It does not separate itself from the space around it. It blends. Words may continue to arrive in a familiar rhythm. They may sound almost the same. They may repeat without purpose. That repetition is not a signal. It does not ask for attention. The voice does not react to whether it is noticed. It does not slow down to be understood. It does not speed up to be heard. It simply remains. Sometimes the sound of the voice feels like distance. Sometimes it feels like closeness. Both are acceptable. Neither is important. The voice does not form a center of experience. It does not pull awareness toward it. Awareness can rest anywhere. The voice continues without checking where attention has gone. There is no reason to follow a sentence to its end. There is no need to hold on to what has just been said. The voice does not mind being interrupted by quiet. Quiet does not interrupt anything. Sound and silence exchange places without effort. Neither one takes the lead. The voice does not carry instruction. It does not shape the moment. It exists the way other sounds exist. It does not announce itself. It does not ask to be named. The rhythm stays even, not measured, not counted, just steady. Words may feel distant now. They may feel thin, almost transparent. They do not need to be clear. Meaning continues to fade from them. What remains is only sound. The voice does not resist this change. It does not try to return to clarity. It remains available without importance. The space receives the voice without reacting. Nothing follows from what is said. Nothing depends on what is heard. The voice stays as part of the background, and the background does not change. The voice continues in the same steady way, not to guide you anywhere new and not to explain what is happening, but simply to remain present as part of the space that already surrounds you. There is no need to listen closely and no need to drift away, because the sound of the voice does not require either attention or distance to continue. Sound and silence are no longer separate experiences here. They exist together, overlapping gently, without competing, without replacing one another, and without changing the overall rhythm of this moment. The voice does not interrupt the quiet, and the quiet does not interrupt the voice, because neither one is trying to take the lead. You may notice that the sound of the voice feels less distinct than before, not because it has become weaker, but because it has stopped standing apart from everything else. It blends naturally into the background, the same way other steady sounds do, without needing to disappear and without needing to be clearly noticed. There is no instruction hidden in what is being said. There is no message that needs to be understood or remembered. The words do not form a sequence that you need to follow, and they do not build toward a conclusion that you need to reach. The voice continues at its own pace, even and unhurried, without checking whether it is being heard and without adjusting itself to match your attention. It does not slow down to invite listening, and it does not speed up to hold interest. It simply remains steady and consistent, like part of the environment. As this continues, sound becomes just one more element in the space around you, alongside the stillness, the weight of your body, and the quiet sense of being here. Nothing needs to be separated out. Nothing needs to be emphasized. The longer this moment continues, the less important it becomes to distinguish between what is sound and what is quiet. They no longer signal change, and they no longer suggest movement from one state to another. They simply coexist, without effort, without direction, and without asking for recognition. The voice does not define the experience, and it does not shape what comes next. It does not mark time, and it does not suggest progress. It remains present in the same way throughout, allowing the moment to unfold without influence. There is no reason to hold on to a sentence as it passes, and no reason to wonder what comes after it. Each phrase exists only briefly and then gives way to the next, without forming a chain that needs to be followed or completed. Nothing depends on continuity here. Sound does not need to fade for quiet to exist, and quiet does not need to deepen for rest to continue. Both are already present, already balanced, already sufficient without any adjustment being required. The space does not respond to either one, and it does not change as they continue. The voice does not attempt to describe this state or name it. It does not pause to explain what is happening or why it feels different from before. It simply remains part of the background, steady and neutral, allowing everything else to stay exactly as it is. There is no need to notice whether you are listening or not. There's no benefit in checking where your attention has gone. The moment does not improve through awareness, and it does not diminish when awareness drifts. Sound and silence continue together, without tension and without contrast, forming a single, uninterrupted field in which nothing needs to happen and nothing needs to change. The voice remains within that field, neither leading nor disappearing, simply present as the moment continues on its own. As the voice continues, it does not become more meaningful, and it does not become less noticeable in any deliberate way. It remains consistent, even, and neutral, allowing the experience to stay simple without introducing contrast or direction. There is no need to decide whether the sound feels close or distant, because distance does not change what is happening here. The voice does not move toward you, and it does not move away. It simply exists at the same steady level, without approaching and without receding. Nothing about this moment depends on clarity. You do not need to hear every word, and you do not need to miss them either. The experience does not improve through precision, and it does not weaken through vagueness. The sound of the voice becomes familiar enough that it no longer asks for recognition. It blends into the background the way steady, repeating sounds do, becoming part of the atmosphere rather than something separate from it. There is no point at which this needs to happen, and no signal that marks the shift. As this continues, it becomes less useful to think in terms of listening or not listening. Those distinctions no longer add anything to the experience. The moment does not depend on how you relate to the sound. The voice does not wait for acknowledgement. It does not pause for understanding. It does not check whether attention is present or absent. It simply continues, allowing the space to remain unchanged. The rhythm of the voice stays steady without emphasizing beginnings or endings. There is no sense of arrival in one sentence and no sense of departure in the next. Each phrase passes gently into the following one without creating momentum or expectation. Nothing here needs to settle further. Nothing needs to loosen or release. The moment is not moving toward rest, because rest is already present in the way everything remains as it is. The voice does not attempt to carry you forward. It does not suggest depth, and it does not imply progress. It remains neutral, consistent, and unchanging, allowing the experience to stay open without direction. There is no advantage in noticing how long this has been continuing. Time is not being measured and it is not being used. The moment does not become more complete by lasting longer, and it does not lose anything by passing quickly. Sound and quiet remain together without contrast, forming a single even field in which nothing stands out and nothing recedes. The voice remains part of that field without becoming central and without disappearing entirely. You do not need to stay with the words as they move along. You do not need to follow their structure or remember what has already passed. Nothing depends on continuity, and nothing depends on sequence. The voice continues in the same way, steady and unobtrusive, allowing the moment to remain exactly as it is without asking for effort, adjustment, or change of any kind. The voice continues, but it no longer feels connected to what came before it, and it does not prepare what comes next. Each sentence exists on its own without depending on the one that preceded it, and without creating expectation for the one that follows. There is no longer a clear sense of progression here. Nothing is moving step by step. Nothing is unfolding in a way that needs to be tracked or understood. The order of the words does not matter in the way it once might have. They do not form a path. They do not guide attention forward. They simply appear one after another without building toward anything. If attention drifts away for a moment, nothing is lost. If it returns briefly, nothing needs to be recovered. The experience does not depend on continuity. The voice does not assume that you are listening from beginning to end. It does not require you to stay present for each phrase. It continues evenly without checking where attention is. There is no need to remember what has already been said. Nothing here refers back to earlier ideas. Nothing points ahead. The voice does not mark time. It does not signal how long this has been continuing. It does not suggest that anything is approaching. As this continues, it becomes less useful to think in terms of before and after. Those distinctions do not add clarity, and they do not change the experience. Moments pass without forming a sequence that needs to be followed. They do not line up. They do not connect in a meaningful way. The voice remains steady, but it no longer creates a sense of movement. It does not carry the experience forward. It does not hold it in place either. Each phrase stands alone, complete enough to exist briefly, and then give way without consequence. Nothing accumulates. Nothing progresses. The idea that this moment should lead somewhere begins to lose relevance. There is no destination implied in the sound of the voice. There is no outcome being prepared. Time does not feel divided into sections here. There is no clear beginning to this part and no clear ending waiting ahead. The moment does not organize itself into a story. The voice does not describe this change. It does not announce that anything has shifted. It simply continues in the same steady way, allowing sequence to fade without interruption. You do not need to follow the order of the words as they pass. You do not need to hold on to them or link them together. Nothing depends on how they are arranged. The experience remains even and uninterrupted as sound continues without structure, without direction, and without purpose, allowing time to pass without being shaped into anything in particular. As the voice continues, the sense of order becomes less relevant than before. The words still arrive one after another, but they no longer suggest that one moment depends on the next, or that anything is being carried forward over time. There is no advantage in noticing which sentence comes first and which follows. They do not form a structure that needs to be held together. They do not rely on position or placement to function. The voice does not create a narrative that unfolds. It does not move through stages. It does not return to earlier points or prepare later ones. Each phrase appears briefly, complete enough to exist on its own, and then passes without leaving anything behind. Nothing accumulates. Nothing is built. The experience remains steady even as attention shifts. Whether attention rests with the sound or drifts elsewhere, the voice continues without reacting. There is no penalty for absence and no reward for presence. Time does not arrange itself into meaningful segments here. Moments do not separate cleanly from one another. They blend, overlap, and pass without forming a clear sequence. The voice does not attempt to organize this flow. It does not slow to emphasize order, and it does not speed up to suggest movement. It remains even, neutral, and unchanging. As this continues, the idea of following along becomes less useful. There is no path being traced by the words, and no progression that needs to be monitored or understood. The voice does not depend on continuity to remain present. It does not require the previous sentence to support the next. Each moment stands independently, without reference. There is no sense that something is approaching or receding. Nothing draws closer, nothing moves away. The passage of time does not create momentum here. It does not gather force. It does not lead toward resolution. The voice remains steady, allowing moments to pass without direction or consequence. They do not need to connect. They do not need to make sense together. You do not need to notice how long this has been continuing. You do not need to check whether anything has changed. The experience does not depend on duration. Sequence continues to loosen until it no longer matters at all. Before and after lose their usefulness. What remains is simply the ongoing presence of sound, unchanged and unstructured, allowing time to pass without being shaped into meaning. Time continues here without needing to move forward or settle into any particular shape. It does not feel divided into moments that matter more than others, and it does not ask to be measured, counted, or organized in any useful way. The voice remains present, but it no longer gives time a sense of direction. Nothing feels earlier or later in a meaningful sense. There is no point in this stretch of time that stands out as different from the rest. The experience does not change as time passes. It does not deepen and it does not thin out. It simply continues, steady and even, without gathering momentum or releasing it. There is no need to think of this moment as part of a longer sequence. It does not depend on what came before, and it does not prepare what comes next. Time does not behave like a path here. The voice does not describe this state or comment on it. It does not explain what time is doing or why it feels different. It remains neutral, allowing time to exist without interpretation. As this continues, time feels less like something that is passing and more like something that is simply present. It does not rush and it does not slow down. It rests in the same way the moment rests, without effort and without intention. There is no sense of waiting here. Nothing is expected to arrive. Nothing needs to conclude. The voice does not signal an ending, and it does not suggest that anything is nearing completion. It continues evenly, without marking transition or change. Time does not accumulate meaning as it passes. It does not build toward rest or resolution. It remains open and unstructured. You do not need to notice how long this has been happening. Duration does not add anything to the experience. The moment remains complete regardless of how long it lasts. The voice stays within this resting time, neither guiding nor fading, simply present as everything continues without movement or direction. Time continues without presenting itself as something that needs to be used. It does not offer opportunities and it does not pass anything by. It remains neutral without favoring movement or stillness. The voice does not give time a rhythm to follow. It does not pace it and it does not slow it down. Time simply exists alongside the sound, unchanged by it. There is no pressure within this moment to arrive anywhere. Nothing is being delayed and nothing is being rushed. Time does not feel scarce and it does not feel abundant. The experience does not shift as time continues. It does not gather weight and it does not lose substance. Each moment remains similar to the last, without repetition becoming noticeable. The voice remains steady within this resting time, without suggesting that anything should happen next. It does not anticipate an ending, and it does not hold space for a beginning. It simply continues. As this continues, time feels less like a sequence and more like a single, extended presence. Moments do not stack on top of one another, and they do not separate cleanly. They remain gently blended. There is no need to orient yourself within this stretch of time. You do not need to know where you are within it or how long it has been unfolding. Time does not ask to be located. The voice does not create markers or reference points. It does not divide this experience into parts that need to be remembered. Nothing here depends on order. Time does not carry meaning forward. It does not store anything from one moment to the next. Each moment stands quietly on its own. The voice remains present without shaping this resting time. It neither interrupts nor emphasizes it. It simply exists within it, allowing time to remain unstructured and at ease. The moment continues without needing to become anything else, and there is no reason for it to change shape, because nothing here depends on completion, and nothing is improved by reaching a clear conclusion. The voice remains present in the same steady way, not to lead you forward, and not to gather meaning, but simply to remain part of the space as it stays open and unstructured. There is no need to make the day feel finished before rest can continue. Unfinished does not mean undone. Unfinished does not mean lacking. It simply means that nothing needs to be forced into closure and nothing needs to be pressed into a final form. The mind may still offer small fragments of the day, the way it sometimes does when things are quiet, but those fragments do not need to connect, and they do not need to become a story that makes sense. They can remain separate, brief, and incomplete without becoming heavy or important. The voice continues evenly without asking you to follow each phrase and without requiring you to hold on to what has already passed. Nothing here needs to be remembered in order for the moment to remain complete. Completion does not need to arrive for the body to remain at ease. It does not need to arrive for time to remain gentle and unmarked. The moment is already sufficient without being resolved, and it does not become more sufficient by being understood. As this continues, the idea of finishing becomes less useful, not because anything has been removed, but because finishing is no longer required for anything to remain steady. The voice does not ask the mind to settle a final thought, and it does not ask the day to become tidy, because the moment does not depend on order. There is no need to close every open edge. Some things can remain open without demanding attention, without creating pressure, and without shaping what happens now. Unfinished can exist quietly, without calling the mind back into effort. The voice remains part of the background, steady and neutral, allowing the experience to stay open in the same way that time stays open, unstructured, and uncounted. Nothing needs to become clear. Nothing needs to be identified. You do not need to locate yourself within this experience. You do not need to know how close you are to sleep or how far you are from it, because neither distance nor closeness changes what this moment is. The moment continues regardless. The voice continues without forming a sequence, without building toward a point, and without asking for a decision, allowing unfinished to feel complete simply because nothing is missing from this quiet and nothing needs to be added. The sense of being unfinished does not need to be replaced with certainty, and it does not need to be replaced with calm, because calm is not a requirement, and certainty would not add anything to what already exists here. The moment does not ask for a final understanding, and it does not reward one, because the experience remains the same whether the mind understands it or not. The voice remains steady, continuing in the same simple way, and the space remains unchanged, receiving sound without reacting to it, and receiving quiet without needing to protect it. Nothing needs to be maintained. Nothing needs to be held together. There is no need to decide what this moment means, because meaning does not stabilize it, and meaning does not improve it. The moment remains stable through its own simplicity, through its lack of demand, through the fact that it does not ask for participation. Unfinished is allowed to remain unfinished, and the moment remains complete anyway, not because something has been achieved, but because nothing is required, nothing is missing, and nothing needs to be made different from what it already is. The voice does not need to continue explaining anything now. It has already done what it needed to do simply by remaining present for a while without asking for effort, attention, or understanding. There is nothing more to follow and nothing more to gather from the words, because the moment no longer depends on language to remain steady. The voice can stay where it is, or it can begin to soften into the background without changing what this moment already is. Sound does not need to be shaped anymore. It does not need to form sentences or carry meaning. It can remain as sound alone, steady and unhurried, without direction. As the voice recedes, nothing is lost. The quiet that follows does not replace it. It simply continues in another form. You do not need to listen in a particular way. You do not need to understand what comes next. There is nothing here that asks for attention or interpretation. The sound that remains does not carry instruction. It does not require memory. It does not ask the mind to stay awake. It is enough to let it be present, the way any gentle sound can be present, without effort and without response, as rest continues on its own. There is nothing else you need to do. Sometimes peace is not something we must learn. It is something we remember. The world pulls us outward, toward goals, toward noise, toward endless motion. But when the heart grows quiet, we begin to sense a deeper rhythm beneath it all, a rhythm that has always been waiting, softly calling us home. This quiet home lives inside you, but it can be easy to forget. That is why Gassho exists, not to add anything new, but to help you return. A space built for stillness, for reflection, for the gentle work of being. In its name, Gassho, there is a gesture, two hands meeting in respect and gratitude, a gesture of unity between self and world, between heart and breath, between sound and silence. When you open the Gassho app, you are not entering another screen. You are stepping into a small temple that travels with you, a place where you can sit without expectation, breathe without demand, and listen without effort. Inside you will find guided meditations, stories inspired by Buddhist wisdom, and the steady presence of sutras, not as lessons, but as companions. The sound you are about to hear is one of those companions, a sound carried through generations, a sound shaped by breath, devotion, and time. You do not need to understand the words. You do not need to follow the rhythm. You do not need to stay awake for it. Let the sound arrive as it is. Let it move through awareness without resistance. Let it remain even as attention fades. There is nothing left to do, only to rest. Let the breath settle. Let the body sink, and simply listen. The sound of the sutra continues, offered from a temple in the quiet mountains of Koya-san, shared here through the Gassho app whenever you wish to return to silence.
小法九小有因世界先生欲の調整関連特性上交友研究学習上福祉所有上連定本線不利構想前所有線因地心正常来有時銀行三万化さと外来世界欲霊死法不幸不化即税宗教環境小三銀行主